Our first word on this list is modicum. When you want a small amount of something, you might ask for a modicum. You might just want a modicum of decency, a modicum of food. I mean, both of those would work. Sometimes a modicum is used as a backhanded insult. You might have a modicum of intelligence. That's not really an insult, but it comes almost to an insult. It means just you have an adequate amount of intelligence. It's not saying you're very bright. So the word modicum, although it's not necessarily positive, it's also not necessarily negative. It sometimes is negative, though it's rarely positive. It comes to us from Latin vis-a-vis Scotland. In Latin, it meant a little way or moderate. And as you can guess, it's very close to our own English words moderate. It has mode in it. Or if you like mathematics, mode. Mode is the common item in a mathematical series. So it should be paired up with the third definition down, a small amount of something. Our next word is diatribe. A diatribe is a very extreme, a very harsh criticism against a person. You might have one politician yelling at another politician saying what an evil, immoral man he is. So anytime you have something that harsh, it's not a small amount of harshness. It's an extremely nasty criticism. It comes from the Latin, and it originally meant learned discussion, diatriba. By the time the French got it, it was turned into a word that was very negative. It's just not a discussion. It was a discussion criticizing somebody very, very, very much. Originally, the Latin was dia. We get a lot of dia, D-I-A's in English from Latin. It always means apart or through, and you can see when you're attacking somebody, tearing them apart, you would need the dia. You get dialysis, diameter, diagram. These words all represent something that's through something. For example, a diagonal goes through across a rectangle. The root was tribian, which meant to rub. Really don't understand that, but diatribe is a very, very strong word. Strong words are good to remember. It should be paired up with the fourth down on the list, a bitter, sharply abusive denunciation, an attack or criticism. Our next word is spurious. Spurious is used almost always as an attack on somebody's argument. You're saying it's not a good argument, it's a deceptive argument. It's an argument that does not have value because it is convoluted, misleading, or deceiving. The word itself comes to us from Latin via Spain, and the Latin word spurious meant illegitimate birth. In other words, parents weren't married. That used to be a very, very big deal. Still is a big deal, but it was really, really a terrible deal 1,000 years ago. It should be paired up with the fifth definition down, false, but intended to seem believable or possible. Our fourth word is innate. It's a simple word, but a lot of people miss it because they don't know how broad it really means. It could mean existing from birth, something you're born with. It could be something native to you, something that you grew up with and has always been part of you. It's something that represents your essence. And it's pretty obvious what it comes from. The in means in. In this case, it's not a not. It means inside or within. That's the prefix, Latin prefix in. And the root is natus, which was the Latin word for born, to be born. And we get all sorts of words from that. Natal as in prenatal care, before birth care. Nascent, beginning. Native, if you're a native of somebody, that's where you've come from. Even the word natural has its origins in that word a long time ago. It should be paired up with the eighth definition down, inborn, native, or inherent. Our fifth word is picayune. Sounds weird. I think it is a fairly weird word, but I think you need to memorize it. It's something of small value, something that has very, very little benefit to. It can mean trifling, almost not worth dealing with. It also means, in many cases, little bits of information. That little bits of information is interesting because some newspapers, particularly the New Orleans newspaper, was called the Picayune, which basically gave you little bits of information. I suppose that's why they're almost bankrupt. I don't know. But it comes from a French and Spanish word, not very useful in any other words. A Picayune was a small copper coin, and I have no idea how that changed to having little bits of information. I suppose it's our concept of something's only worth pennies. It's not worth very, very much. It should be paired up with the bottom definition of little, value, or account. Our next word is very important because of its roots, affluent. Affluence means you have generally a lot of wealth. If you live in the affluent part of town, you live where a lot of people have nice houses and nice cars. If you fly a lot and you have a wealthy lifestyle, you are said to have affluent. It can also be used in the sense of having a lot of power. If a politician can make legislation and do what he wants, he has a lot of affluence. Don't confuse that with influence. He gets around a lot, in other words. The word affluence in many cases just can mean an abundance, a lot of something. But for the most part, you should think of it in terms of money or wealth. It comes from a Latin prefix a, which we've had before. Ab means to, and fluere, to flow. To flow, well, what does that have to do with money? Well, you're flowing with money, you are affluent. If you come together with something, you have confluence. You have influence. If something just flows, it's a fluid. If something flows a lot all at once, it's an influx. If something flows in an erratic way, it fluctuates. So flu is a very common root in English. Affluence should be paired up with the top definition, rich or wealthy. Our next words is one of my favorites. It's gregarious. If you're a gregarious person, you're fond of other people, you're friendly to other people, you go out and you socialize, you party a lot, you enjoy the company of others. It comes from the Latin word gregarious, which strangely meant a flock, a herd, like a herd of sheep or a flock of sheep. You wonder how we get from there to gregarious. Well, there's certain animals that are called flock animals or herd animals, and they like to be with each other, and that's what a gregarious person does. He likes to be with the human flock, the human herd. It's a word root, greg, that we use a lot. Egregious, if you're segregationalist, you like to keep groups apart. If you go to your church and have a congregation, you are with your own people that believe in your religion that you believe in. As a matter of fact, they call it a flock in many churches, so that all makes sense. It should be paired up with the sixth definition down, which is sociable or outgoing. It's a good word to know. You should always ask yourself, are you the gregarious sort, or are you unfriendly? Our eighth word is abrogate. To abrogate is to get rid of something, usually by legal means, official means. It's something very formal, generally speaking. When you just say to your friend, I can't come to your party, you didn't abrogate. That's not formal enough. However, if one country stops a treaty with another country, let's suppose they had a mutual defense pact, and one country got mad at the other, one might abrogate that treaty, stop it by official means. So it always has that sense of legality to it. It comes from a Latin roots, the ab, which we've had over and over again. It means away from, and rogare, which was a request or to ask. interrogatory. A lot of ROGs in the English language always has something to do with asking. So we're not going to ask about it anymore. It's away from asking. We're just going to push it away. It doesn't count anymore. You've abrogated the treaty. You've abrogated your obligations. It should be paired up with the second definition down on the list, to abolish by authority. Our ninth word is revel, not rebel, revel. It looks a little bit like the word rebel, and that's okay because it's very related to that word. Revel, with the V, is really just to take great pleasure or delight in something, to really be into partying or enjoying whatever you do. It comes from the Latin word rebellare, where we all get the word rebel from. If you're a rebellious person, you probably like to party. I don't know why that is, but you always get the person who's the strange dude that's always having parties and he's having a lot of fun. And that takes a rebellious sort of personality. The French got this from the Romans, the Latin language, and it's sort of changed from the idea if you rebel against what society's doing a lot, you probably are having a lot of fun doing it, and they switched it to a V sound and we get revel. So they're very closely related words. It should be paired up with the ninth definition down, which is to enjoy. Our last word is circumspect. Circumspect is a word we use if you're being extremely careful, if you well analyze something in advance, you're very, very cautious. If you're a firm believer in the fact that if something seems too good to be true, it probably isn't true. So you just very, very, very cautious. You think about things ahead of time before you actually act on it. It's a good word to know because it has two really good Latin roots. Circum, which is around. We get circumference. If you go around the world, you circumnavigate the world. Lots of words circa mean around. Even the word circle, I suppose, comes from that. And the next root is spectare, which meant to look or watch. We get a spectator who watches sports events. If it's spectacular, it's something that is amazing to see. Spectacles are another word of eyeglasses, something you see through. So if you put those together, it's you look around very carefully. You watch things very carefully. It should be paired up with the seventh definition down, watchful and discreet, cautious and prudent. So that's the end of that list. Again, these are all fun. I'm sure after you finish 1,000 of them, you'll say, gee, that was fun.